Hi, you're listening to the Holistic Hippie RN. I'm Laura Gibby, your host. And today I have here with me Helen Sage. She's a very good friend of mine, and we're going to talk about orgasmic living. And so, a little bit about Helen. She's a healer of various sorts. Her power is moving energy through the methods of yoga, massage, intuitive healing, and life coaching. So, but most of all, what she loves doing is helping women who've experienced a loss come home to their souls and helping them navigate life through orgasmic living. She's successfully navigated through a 3-year divorce and still thriving while she raises her teenage kids. Her background in athletic training and massage gave her an amazing knowledge of the physical body, and her studies in Reiki, shamanism, and psychic meditation have given her the permission of what she once shoved down for survival to start rising up and living an orgasmic life. So, Helen, do you have anything you want to add?
Oh, I don't know. I think that kind of sums it up.
I love it. So you help women learn how to re-navigate their lives through orgasmic living. What would you describe orgasmic living as?
Oh, good question. There's a lot of things with that. Like, I think, when you hear the word orgasm, people automatically think sexual, like this is the taboo. How dare you talk about that? And I actually see it as, okay, so I'm going to get my notes out here. So Merriam-Webster it defines orgasm as the rapid, pleasurable release of more neuromuscular tension. And, whether we're thinking about, when we do think about like orgasm, like, I don't know about you, but I want that every day, sexual or not. But we can get to that state without being sexual.
Right. That really, really heightened state of just like pleasurable living, like feeling just amazed by life.
It's exactly a pleasure. There's this term Aine, and it is, oh God, I've heard it in Lakota traditions and I've heard it also in the South American traditions. But Aine is the reciprocity, is the idea of reciprocity. And I want that reciprocity in life.
Mm-hmm.
Of a way to think about it is when I have to do stuff and I want the reciprocity of pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
is kind of the way that I see it.
Yeah, like finding joy in everything you do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that aren't joyful. Like, I'm sorry, I do not like doing plumbing work, but I have to sometimes. You got to clean out the drain. And I used to live in an old building that had like 100-year-old plumbing.
Oh no.
And and then my ex-husband redid it. So there's a whole nother gamut. It was like clockwork. My kids were small. There's stuff boiling on the stove. The hardware store closed in 10 minutes and my plumbing goes out and I need a part.
Oh no.
Disaster. I'm like, shit. Like, what do I do? Pulling my hair out. So it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to put my tiara on because I feel beautiful with my tiara. I'm going to kids, I'm running down, turn everything off, run to the hardware store, get what I need, come back. I've got my tiara and I'm doing plumbing work.
I love it.
There's ways to, there's going to be stuff that we don't want to do, but how can we make it pleasurable?
Yeah, absolutely.
And at least that we get fueled some way, shape, or form within us, because you can't just keep going. And yeah, I did that for so long. I totally did that in my marriage. I lived my marriage for my husband. I lived my marriage for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I never took time out for myself.
What would you say, where was it that you noticed that you started realizing, like that point where you were kind of like, oh, I'm living this mundane, not even mundane, but I'm living this day-to-day life where I'm not finding the pleasure in just things that you do. You're not giving yourself the pleasure of living in a way.
There was a turning point. So, okay. I was married for, oh God. I got married in 2000. So do the math.
A while.
A while. This was like 2014, 15, I think it was 14. It was 14. I went to visit a friend of mine and her life was on fire. And I'm going through a divorce at this time, by the way. We were separated, life was hell. And I go to visit this friend of mine and her life was on fire and she was just having the best time. Her business was thriving. She was doing really good in her marriage. And I'm like, what the hell? And she's like, she mentioned a class for women. So I looked into it and started taking it because I was like, I want that. And one of our a homework assignment was to write our desires.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds really easy, right? Like, okay, I'm going to sit down and write all of my desires out. And it sounds kind of fun, I think. But I sat down with my piece of paper, my blank piece of paper. And I'm like, no problem. And I sat there. And I sat there. And I sat there. And I went, holy shit. I have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized like I had turned into my mother. Like no one wants to be their mother, right? I'm this subservient housewife. And I was just like, oh my God. And it was from that point on that I decided that I needed to start living for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't even really thought about it until like a year ago. I kept having these clients who have no idea. And I would be like, okay, hey, why don't you sit down and write out what you do want? Why don't you think about and getting clear on that?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I can't even do that. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm needed.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting because it's like so often we think we know what we desire, but in the same hand, when we really break it down and think about it, sometimes it's like, oh, I have no clue. And then it's like an eye opening where you realize like, oh, there's a lot I need to figure out as far as like what I desire and where I want to get from that, how
Yeah.
to change it.
Yeah. And when you have all these things in your head and you're like, oh, I totally know, blah, 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 blah. And you're running around. But when when we write it down on paper,
Yeah.
it's a whole different ball game because it's like, oh, it's not just inside of me. It's right here looking at me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, do I really want that? Do I not? It makes it concrete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like actually putting words to it instead of like it floating around in your head so much. Yeah.
It grounds it. I think it grounds it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think there's a whole stigma to it because it's like, oh, are we doing it right? You get in your journal. I didn't journal for years because it was like, oh my God, I'm writing wrong in my own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not allowed to do that.
Yeah, that's true. I was on this writers group on Facebook, and so many people are like, when did you start writing? And I'm like, doesn't everyone start writing when they learn to write? Even though, I know what they mean, like when did you start writing something? But it's like there's no right or wrong way to write. You just get the words out. And it makes such a huge difference as opposed to like Did I journal correctly today? Because did I get it all out? Although I will say one thing I learned with journaling is try to write down, appreciating the good things you did in the day, and like try to, when you write about something, not do any of the self-bashing, because then it like is just a harmful journal. That's the only thing I had really learned, is like write about the things you look forward to. But I love that you pointed out in the sense of, like, people stop themselves before they start themselves because they worry they're not going to do it right.
Yeah.
So how
And
would you say you got started in, you found that people needed you? What were some steps you took towards being able to start walking towards that calling?
it's funny, I've dabbled in that calling since then, or since that day of realization. Like,
Mhm.
my life was a mess. I gave myself a couple of years. I needed a couple of years to kind of like get my shit together.
Mhm.
And at that time, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just know I wanted to inspire people. That's
Mhm.
what I wanted to do. And started delving into, I moved, I got out of kind of, I started my new life.
Mhm.
And I knew I wanted to get into some things, or was being drawn to things
Mhm.
of, that's when I started studying shamanism. That's when I started really getting into my Reiki. Uh, and those were just energetic ways to work through myself.
Mhm.
And which I think that really helped me get clear of, oh no, I'm here to help people.
Mhm.
And and that was clear. And but it's just all kind of morphed. Like, I've always stayed on that path of that inner workings, but also on the path of, and always asking myself, how do I want to live my life? What do I need in my life to fuel me?
Mhm.
Yes, I could have moved to a town. I live in a resort town in Crested Butte, Colorado, and I could have moved to like a place where it was less expensive to live. But I think my soul would have just freaking died in a city. Like, I know I need to fuel myself, and I get that by going into the woods. But I know as a single mom, I've got an hour,
Yep.
like, it's really not. I don't have time to drive somewhere. I don't have to, I would get like 5 minutes in the woods somewhere, be like, okay, gotta go.
Yep.
Meanwhile, like, financially, it probably would have been a lot easier on me. Uh,
Well,
like,
I like nature more. So
exactly. I love nature more. I've always been one to be like, oh, fuck it. That doesn't make sense logically, but I'm just going to do it.
yeah.
So there we are. But it's just kind of morphed. And then I took little steps, like in my offerings of, I was already doing massage, but then I started, like, in my massages, it was kind of funny because I was too afraid to morph the shamanism in, or like, I would have to hide my Reiki because people are there to get their massage. They want to be rubbed. And Reiki's, I think, way more powerful, but my hands are still.
Mhm.
And I was working for someone else where they were expecting me to rub people.
Mhm.
So I stopped that, but and stopped hiding, actually. I was very scared, but I want to smudge this person. I don't know why. So I just started doing it. I want to get my drum and drum over them. Are they going to think I'm too weird? Fuck it. Just do it.
I think
And
that's
started actually
awesome.
getting more comfortable with that. And
Yeah.
then the intuitive readings started coming in,
Mhm.
and I started picking things up on their injuries, and started being able to, I learned how to really clear that out
Mhm.
without taking it on myself.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you started following the path of where you knew what you wanted to live, and then following the path of what you enjoy doing, and then following the path of stepping more into your authentic self, of the things you had learned, and it just flows.
It does.
Yeah.
And using it's so funny, because there's, I've studied a couple different lineages. There's shamanic, which is South American studies in, and this whole other like universal world of like psychic studies, whatever the hell that is. And there's Reiki, which is Japanese, and they all are the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're in that's kind of coming home and living as one with your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And even my yoga, I teach forest yoga, and it's about walking one with your soul instead of reaching enlightenment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that.
I do too. Isn't it
That's
great?
cool. Yeah. Yeah, I remember when I first met you, you were doing healing for me, and I thought it was just the coolest thing, like how you do the healing, because it's different. It's different, and I loved it, and it was so intuitive, but I understood it really well. And I think like you definitely have a huge gift in that. It's so neat. It's so neat hearing how your journey's been too, and how you've been growing into your authentic self.
You. It's fun. It's fun. It is. It really has been fun along the way. And I think that's like a big part that we forget about.
Mm-hmm.
That like life has to be serious. And
Mm-hmm.
I get it, of like, well, how are we gonna, some people are just on the level of how are we gonna pay our bills? And I've been there, and it's real, but it's kind of like getting into this place of trust with everything, and
Mm-hmm.
just remembering that even when times are stressful, we could still bring in, it doesn't always have to be serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you say is like if you could give someone a tip for how they could tap into more of an orgasmic living, what would be a tip of something that they could do that kind of can level up into that? You know what I mean? Like an exercise, just something they could practice.
That's a really good question. One of the things I like to teach people is to, okay, at the beginning of the week, look at your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have on there? What do you have to do? Look at the things like, okay, I've got to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this are kind of for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. We got everything on there. What brings you pleasure?
Ooh.
And what do you absolutely hate?
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at the things that you like absolutely do not want to do you really have to do them? Can you send them off to someone? Can you have someone else do them? Or how can you make that pleasurable if you have to do that?
Put on the tiara. I love
Put on the tiara, when in doubt, put on the tiara. For me, I like purple lipstick and a tiara.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a really good exercise. I like that.
And what's, looking at your priorities and
Mm-hmm.
what do you have to do,
Mm-hmm.
and what can you do to make it pleasurable?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to go pick up my kids, and it's going to be like, it's really hectic to do that, and I don't know how long I'm going to have to sit. But it's like, oh, wait a minute, hang on, because I feel like I'm missing out on maybe some work time. I could either bring it with me, or, oh, I could just look at a book for once.
Yeah. I go there where I'm like, oh, wait, I can read a chapter.
Uh-huh.
I'm reading on something. And usually when I
Exactly.
bring the book, then something happens. Like I wind up having a great conversation with someone instead. I'm like, oh, I didn't read my book, but I met someone really interesting to chat with.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting when you like start planning like, oh, I'm going to bring this to entertain myself, and then life totally might send something else because it's like, oh, you wanted entertainment while you're waiting, as opposed to sitting and stewing that you don't want to be there.
And I think there's another key point of actually saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
Saying yes to myself, saying yes to getting out of habits, saying yes to, coming home,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and yes to that orgasmic flow, because it's awesome. I'm not always there, or feelings of, our fear and feelings of anger and grief tend to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
But they also, I think, help keep the balance of helping us stop. They don't make us stop, because we have a choice to whether we continue to shove it down
Yeah.
or we deal with it.
Is there a way you would say that if you notice that you're falling out of being in flow with an orgasmic living, is there a way that you can redirect yourself? Like, oh, I'm tapping into the negative stuff that's been coming in, or I'm tapping into the challenges a little too much, like the overwhelm. Is there a way to redirect?
I think with the overwhelm, the redirect would be to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Put on your calendar some time to sit
Mm-hmm.
and recalibrate, process. And I like to give people some tools that they can actually do that. But you have to choose to I think that overwhelm is just a indicator that you need to stop and go inside. And you can choose to continue to let it continue, or you can choose to talk to it.
Right. Right. Like you can let it fester, or you can evaluate.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. I like that.
And it's what's crazy about it. And it's so funny because when we allow ourselves to really fully give ourselves the time and space to actually fully feel whatever that overwhelm is, usually it's like grief or anger or fear.
Mm-hmm.
When we allow ourselves to fully feel that, or not feel it, but experience it,
Mm-hmm.
to experience it, it moves through us quicker.
I could see that. Yeah. Because it's not festering like a wound anymore. It's healing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's being seen. We all just want to be seen, right? Hey, um but and it's kind of funny because if we just avoid it, it'll fester. Like you said. We have to hold on to it longer, and it's so like, oh no, we can't do this. We can't just experience it.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like society oftentimes, it's like, they teach us to kind of just not ignore it, but like kind of push it away, as opposed to like, oh, I'm going to experience this. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to learn from it. And then I'm going to go back to, living my best life because I'm able to release from it.
Well, you're able to release from those. It's the clean out. It's like cleaning out your closet. Your closet gets really, really full. And you're like, oh my God. And you want something, but you can't fit it in. So you have to clean your closet out in order to fit that new thing in. And it's the same thing of cleaning out those reactions and the experiencing those feelings, so that more of that goodness, that's the orgasm, that pleasure that can come in. And you're usually, because you're not under all that stress anymore, your experience of life flows more.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that you're not as triggered, you're not as reactive. It's more in that flow state, which I
Yeah.
love that state. You know, you're vibing on that frequency of flow versus the frequency of
Low.
down here. But the thing that I, mentioning the society doesn't allow us that. We're taught that, and it's okay to be there. I think saying yes to ourselves and giving ourselves that permission.
Yeah, definitely.
Two big things.
I think too, a lot of times people forget that they can give themselves permission to do things like, and it sounds like such an easy thing, but at the same time, I've noticed sometimes when you just say, oh, I give myself permission to forgive myself for XYZ, it actually seems like such a big weight lifts. Or like, oh, I give myself permission to find the pleasure in life, like to go have a great time, even though X, Y, and Z might be happening, or, whatever. I notice like just those words, I give myself permission, like really just blasts open doors, it feels like, because a lot of people forget that they get to choose to give themselves permission to enjoy their life.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Crazy. And it's so funny as we're sitting here talking about it, and it just mesmerizes me every day of that it sounds so weird that we have to give ourselves that.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Sometimes, I think after, it's funny though. Yeah. Did you get all that?
Yeah. I get that. I totally understand, because it's like we're in charge of ourselves. So we never think, oh, I need permission from myself.
Well, as society and as women, we're not, generalizing
Mm-hmm.
generalizing here, that we're not taught that we can do it. I mean, look how many years back, like, women couldn't vote, women couldn't do these things. We're talking generational things. Like, even in the world today, I remember, oh God, I was traveling to India, and they're like, where's your husband? I'm like, oh, he's at home. And they're like, why are you here? Why aren't you with him? Like, you need to be traveling with your husband. And I'm like, no, I don't. It's so it just fascinates me.
Yeah, because even in that case, it's almost like society telling you again, someone else needs to give you permission. So it's like women have kind of the double end of like needing permission for, from other people to really enjoy doing things, when really we have it in ourselves to give ourselves permission, and we have it in ourselves to choose like living this orgasmic life and finding all these pleasures in life and really being in flow with ourselves. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is that we make it so much harder than it would have to be. And in the same sense, it's like it can be just so easy. Like you said, you look at your calendar and the things that you have scheduled that really bring you joy, work on making sure you can do those, and the other things, either find the joy in it, find a way to make it more joyful, or delegate it. Like, delegation is definitely key in things. I love delegating. So it's like when I was nursing, I remember people come up if they're caught up on their shift, they're like, do you need help? And I'd be like, oh no. And someone's finally like, you never say no. Always say yes. So then after that, people come up and they're like, do you need help? Yes. Can you do this? And I think that's one of the big things too, is that like delegating tasks that you would rather not do is huge, because then there's someone else who might actually find all the joy in doing the task, or you can find, a way that you're going to enjoy it more. So I like that.
That's
cool.
In some ways, that's so that's being more in our power of allowing us to receive that help.
Yeah.
So that we can concentrate more on somewhere else. I think that's another point of we're taught that we have to do it all. we can't have that help. And as females, being in that feminine and being able to delegate and receive that help, or, just nourish yourself. That's that ine, that's that nourishing and that self-nourishing.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important. We
Yeah.
don't have to do it all.
Right. And we're not meant to,
I try.
Yeah. We're not meant to do
As
it
the
all.
king, I mean, queen, I mean, it all.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Do you have anything you want to add? I love this conversation.
Oh, there are so many, I think, yes, I do.
I love it.
Thanks. There's so many ways to do that. Just that with the orgasmic living, I think there are so many ways to create that within yourself. I do think it encompasses every aspect of our lives. It's a complete package of life, of like, you have relationships, you have your body, you have your spiritual body, you have just kind of life in general, all of those aspects. And what I've done these studies in all these different kind of modalities, and they all get to the same point. So remember that if you're being drawn to something, go with that. It's a different way than maybe over here, but there is no right or wrong. Knowing that there is no right or wrong.
Yeah, that's huge.
And yeah, just let that sink in. There is no right or wrong. You got to go with what resonates with you. They all get there. They
And
all will help you.
yeah, and I feel like when you go, or you can even say flow with what's right or wrong, like when you really, or not right or wrong, but when you jump on that ship of like, oh, this is drawing me in, it's because it's drawing you for a reason. Whereas if you resist something for a while and then you eventually get drawn in, you're like, oh, why did I wait so long? Like when something draws you in, it's like, that's a great flow to flow with.
It could be a timing thing too with that,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, true.
There were some things that you might have needed to learn first before you were able to be there fully, or maybe in the capacity that benefited you more.
Right. Which is why there's no right or wrong. You have the lessons to learn
Exactly.
no matter how you
It's
get there.
The experience. What do you want to experience?
Yes, exactly. What do you give yourself permission to experience?
Exactly. Oh, and experiencing, I want to add this. Look, if anyone's interested, look to experience a retreat that I'm having this spring.
Yes.
It's gonna be so awesome. It will be in May. I went at when towns
Not
in
snowed in.
not snowed in, and it's quiet. I want a quiet time. But it'll be an amazing weekend to start to come home to your soul. There'll be lots of yoga. We'll do some ceremonies, and I'm sure there's going to be some dancing in there, and small and intimate. Food will be cooked for you. There will be an amazing place for you to stay, just to really nourish yourself. That's what I want. I want a really safe container and like lots and lots of nourishment.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And to know that you are loved and supported.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great place to go to, to Like it's a place where it's like you really, really get to learn about the luxuries of yourself by experiencing something that's so deep and soulful of, like you said, like coming back to yourself. You get to like have this eye-opening experience about you.
And then in a place where you don't have to worry about, well, how am I going to eat? What am I going to cook? What am I? That's going to be there for you.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming today, Helen. I'm so glad we got to chat.
Me too. Thanks for having me. This has been fun. Thank you.
I know. You're welcome to come back anytime. Take care. Thank you.